In this episode, we take a deep dive into sacred leadership. We talk about what sacred leadership is, how it differs from modern and conventional leadership, and how you can start to embrace sacred leadership in your life right now. Welcome to Man Quest Define Meaning, where we help men navigate modern life, find their true purpose, and redefine manhood. I'm your host, James, and each week, inspiring guests share their journeys of overcoming fear, embracing vulnerability, and finding success. From experts to everyday heroes, get practical advice and powerful insights. Struggling with career, relationships, or personal growth? We've got you covered. Join us on Man Quest Define Meaning. Now, let's dive in. We each have a role within the ecosystem of life on Earth. One of the great missions of our lives is attuning to that role and living it. Good morning, Matthew. What do you mean by that statement?
Hello, brother. Lovely to be here with you. So the Earth is an ecosystem and we are all here, a part of it. And I think one of the wisdoms that's been lost is that we arrive into the world with like the role that we play within the ecosystem actually seated inside us. You can say it's seated in the DNA. You can say it's part of the soul of each of us individually. But it's part of the life journey of each of us to find our way to building our relationship with that role within the ecosystem. And you can think about it through like the animal lens. Like the badger has a role within the ecosystem of life. The elephants have a role within the ecosystem of life. The trout has a particular role. They all play a place. They all have a place and fit into a role within kind of the greater story. And we have that as humans, but we also have that as individuals, individual kind of unique threads within the greater whole. So I love that your podcast and the exploration here is all about meaning, because I feel like that's a real awakening on Earth right now is, what is the meaning that already lives inside me? What's the meaning that's already here that I get to kind of grow to attune to over time?
Yeah, that's so I feel as though we all have this soul inside us. And that soul, when we attune to it, or its intuition, whatever you want to call it, is almost our guiding compass. And when we trust our intuition, our compass is able to direct it. But when we kind of get caught up in the outside world, it almost becomes hard. It almost becomes overwhelming and hard to actually understand and to decipher our direction.
Yeah, I really hear that. But the way that it sits, we all kind of find our way to metaphors that work for us individually. And one of the metaphors that really works for me is it's almost like the river of destiny. And we're always on the river of destiny. All of us in every moment are on the river of destiny. It's just the depth of the river that we've found our way to. It's the quality of ourselves that we've found our way to. And over a lifetime, if we really stay the course and, spiral deeper into ourselves and go through these journeys of transformation and remembering and courageous stepping forward, I feel like we touch deeper layers of the river. We kind of come into deeper expressions of ourselves. And, someone might be on the surface. There's still an expression of like kind of the core of who they are, but there's a quality that becomes more apparent when we go into the deeper meaning, the deeper self, the expression of ourselves at the core of it all.
It just rings a bell now, actually. I remember when I went to South America doing white water rafting, and I was caught in a swirl underneath the water. And it's almost like, I almost feel like now you mentioned that, the swirl, the deeper you go, you get a swirl. And underneath that swirl, it's almost like it shakes you up, shakes the old version of you to help you to unleash the new version.
Yeah, totally. I love that. I would love to hear about that story sometime too, by the way. For me, it's almost like the depths of the river are like, we're kind of going into unconscious. So we're going out of what we think we are into like the deeper truth of ourselves that we have to awaken to. And it's quite a radical thing to really contact who we are at the core of ourselves, particularly because we've been conditioned by the world so strongly, and we kind of come with layers of trauma. And so when we contact those deeper parts of ourselves, it's a real radical thing. And one of the ways I like to talk about it is, if we want to swim in the depths, we're going to have to learn to breathe water. And that's a transformational process. Like it's almost like going from the one that floats on the surface to the one who grows gills and becomes a whole other being. So there's this transformational, almost this mythic transformational process where we become something that we wouldn't originally recognize necessarily, but it is so innately the truth of what we are. And I love that idea of having to become something else, but that something else is actually like the deeper truth of us.
Yeah. I hear you on that. Yeah, it was quite a terrifying experience, the whitewater rafting, but it was fun overall. Can you tell us about yourself? Who are you, shall we say?
Yeah. So my name is Matthew Liam Gardner. You could call me a teacher and a mentor. I'm something like that. I founded and I lead a mystery school or a wisdom school called School of Living Myth. And this is our second year now. I've been mentoring and teaching for two decades now at kind of increasing levels of quality along the way. It's been a really long journey of kind of finding my way to where I am now. And yeah, the school has been my kind of the thing I'm dedicated to the last couple of years. It is a space where some of the forgotten wisdoms come through and some of the emergent ones arise as well. So, we're connected to threads of ancestry and ancestors. We're connected to threads of like the great cycles of time and the story of humanity and the story of us individually, destiny and embodiment, all kind of woven in together, purpose, all of that woven in together. That's where I spend my days. And we take it from a bit of you could say I come in from a bit of it's almost part esoteric a part esoteric side, but it's also part indigenous. I think a lot of what I'm holding point for in the world is almost like, in some ways it's European people or Caucasian people or white people remembering that they have a seat at the fire as well. And remembering what it takes to like find our way to that seat. When we say culture, often when someone says culture, often they point away from themselves. Culture, it's over there. Like indigenous is over there. And there's this reclamation process that is a long one and it's very nuanced, but it's about coming back to pointing at ourselves and saying culture, pointing at ourselves and saying indigenous, or at least belonging, and everything that comes with that, which is a real, it's a real kind of deep humanity journey that we're on right now. Oh, and I'm also doing this walk. I'm about to walk roughly 900 miles, somewhere between 900 and 1,000 miles, thereabouts. We think it's going to be from the Isle of Wight up and along the Spine of Albion, which is a sacred site, ley line, energy, portal, magic, all along straight up the middle of Britain, all the way to Durness in Scotland's far north. And it's a bit of a personal pilgrimage, a rite of passage, and a community stirring at the same time, a bit of a cultural renewal, a call for cultural renewal at the same time. I begin in 9 days. So I'm right in the thick of it right now, brother.
Nice. So I would love to hear, how did you actually get onto this path? What was it because I don't know if you're like me, and it took me probably a good 28, 30 years to really to kind of realize that there's more to life than what I was living. How did you get onto this path, this journey?
Yeah, I feel like I started really young in a subtle way because I was the oldest brother and I was in the fatherless household, and little me, really, when dad left, I made it mean, it's my job to be a leader for my brothers. And I kind of had a sense of things, as a 4-year-old, I used to go up to people at traffic lights and say, "Why are you fat?" Or I'd go up to them and be like, I was smoking. I'd be like, "Do you want to die? Why are you smoking?" Just I was this kind of really direct, straight shooter 4-year-old. And I had this sense that the world wasn't quite like right is the way I'd maybe describe it. Like there was some stuff the world was weird, and not everything was as it seemed. I kind of got that one pretty early on. And so my love for my brothers really set me on a journey of like finding my way to, you could say, truth, or what is real, or what is actually sustainable, or what is actually love. And that just catalyzed me into early days personal development, Tony Robbins, just really journeying through those realms. And eventually I got to a point where I was old enough and I started doing workshops, and then I started doing my own retreats. And then I've kind of journeyed quite far along that road. And I've just found myself in a space now where, because the road continues, like the spiral continues. There's always, everything that we think we want to be, we kind of one day get there, and then eventually it spirals into the next thing as well. And like that fish in the water, like we don't know what comes after we get there. And so I kind of got to some places and then have spiraled into the next stage. So I've just been following the thread my whole life. And to be honest, I love it. There's like, it's just such a rich and exciting adventure. Like if I'm going to be a human being and living on earth right now, I'm going to be on the quest of becoming myself. And I'm going to be on the adventure of like learning everything that I can and becoming everything that I can in this lifetime. So to me, it feels like a great adventure, and like the only big game really worth playing. So I want to play it.
Yeah, nice. It's one of them journeys that once you start and you realize, yes, it's hard, but I would never go back. I would never go back to where I was 10 years ago, simply because the changes that you kind of incorporate into yourself are life-changing. And it's this idea that when you start to discover who you actually are, there's a sacredness to it.
Yeah.
And that sacredness is where we can really discover what we're actually meant to do here. And as you said, you have this idea that I'm going to be this new version of me, but you get this new version and you've got another new version and then another new version. And it's almost like layering up. Like a computer game, you battle one thing and you level up in the game and you're like, yes, next one. But yeah, it's this journey of exploring ourselves to really, I reckon sometimes to drop the outer
Yeah. So just hearing you share there, what I was feeling was this journey of, one day you and I are going to be in our 70s. And I don't know about you, but for me, I'm never going to retire. Like that's not my journey. I'm like, this is about so much more than money, or, this is like a way of being and a life to be lived. So the 70-year-old me is going to be very different to who I am right now. There's going to be the outer layers that will peel off, and I'll probably be a lot slower. I'll probably be a lot more graceful, not so fiery and, pokey all the time. And I suppose what I'm saying there is, yeah, the outer layers fall off, and in some sense, as we come deeper into life, like the kind of that squidgy inner being reveals themselves, like the grace and the innocence and the needing help sometimes. It's that the whole idea of like the deeper into life we get, we kind of come back to being a child, and the like really kind of integrated elders are also deeply embody their child and allow themselves to receive support and still powerfully stand in who they are. So I think it's this full circle that we go on. Shedding those skins as we do.
Yeah, it's you tend to get told as a teenager that stop being a child, grow up. Then you get to probably your 30s if you're lucky, 40s definitely, and you're told, and you learn that, do you know something? I want to be more like a child. So you kind of have this idea that you get told not to be a child, and then you get told, and then not get told, you kind of learn to be a child again. And when you start to learn that to be a child again, there's that childlike playfulness and that lightness. So almost that sense of surrender. You can't control what's happening. And so I think a lot of children just kind of roll with it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just about finding our way to being ourselves while also, that brings back that river of destiny. We're still floating on the river, and there does have to be a surrender along the way, because like the current's got us and we can either fight it or like go with it. And the going with it is trust, like there are times to forge our path, but even that is a trusting, to like this walk, for instance, it doesn't make sense, but I have to trust. And there is a forging in it, but it's still me just kind of surrendering to the deeper call. And there is a deeper call, I said the deeper call, but it's almost like what compels us, what compels us, even though we can't necessarily make sense of it. We don't need to really. It's just, if it calls us so powerfully that we have to answer, it's for us. There's almost no around it.
Yeah, definitely. You talk about sacred leadership. What is sacred leadership?
Yeah, so one of my mentors is a man called Mac McCartney, and I think his next birthday is 74. I think so, something like that. And I consider Mac to be one of the key elders here in the UK, in Britain. And one of the things he says I really love, and everyone has that, like the pieces that they take with them and say it over and over again. And this is one of his. So I don't just want to say it, I want to let people know this is his. He says, when you know what you most deeply and profoundly love, you have, in a sense, defined what is sacred to you. When you know what it is that you most deeply and profoundly love, you have, in a sense, defined what is sacred to you. And so there's lots of directions we could go talking about sacred leadership, but I feel for today that probably the most important part is just to acknowledge that it is letting ourselves be penetrated and changed and grown by what we most deeply and profoundly love. And really trusting that what we deeply and profoundly love is our sacred work in the world. It is what we're called to, and it almost shows the way in some ways. So it comes back to this really simple, and it's in its simplest way, it comes back to this simple idea of like, okay, like what do you like love so much that it brings tears to your eyes? And what is so profoundly real for us that it just changes us? Like I see some of my brothers when they have a child and they hold that child in their hands for the first time, and it changed, like they are changed in that moment. Something goes, and now we're on a whole other timeline. They are grown by this almost initiatory moment. And it's the same for like what we love. But I this is part of why I love what you're up to, because us attuning to what we really love, like, and because we have to we're sense-making beings, we have to make sense of the feelings and the pulls. And I don't know if all that many people take the time in their lives to really spend time resting into what is it that I most deeply and profoundly love? And can I give my life to that? Can I be courageous enough to give my life to that? And that's the beginnings of sacred leadership. It's that the willingness to be the love that we are in the world. And, when we love something so much that it brings tears to our eyes, that activates and initiates those deeper layers of us. It calls upon the strength. All of a sudden we're moving through the world charged with a love and a courage. I don't know about you, but in some sense, for me, going back to my brothers in the beginning, it was my love for my brothers that became my life path. And then my brothers are now my human family. And so it's that same love still that compelled me to begin this journey with my brothers that's actually got me walking this walk. It's my love for it doesn't even make sense necessarily, but it's my love for the change and the evolution of all of us, and us coming into the next chapter together, beginning to do this better together. So yeah, what do you most deeply and profoundly love? I soaked in those words for a couple of years, and I tell you what, it changed me. There's no other way to say it. Just sitting with, I like to sit with particular things for a few seasons. Some things are like for just a moment or just a day. Other things are like for a couple of years. And that one for me was for a couple of years. And those were the years where I transitioned into the school, transitioned into what I would call a bit of a deeper path. And I began to my experiences, I began to embody something that I could always feel was possible in my life, but like my poetry, for instance, I'd read people's poetry or their writing, and I'd be like, how does that person write so well? Like, I would try, but I could never quite get my soul into my words. It was very mindy in a lot of ways. And over those years, being connected to what I most deeply and profoundly love, it brought through my love into my words. It brought my soul into my words. And so my writing matured and it grew. And so it's part of how that love changes us. It literally grows us because it's like being invested. And I come from a sports background, and I have always my whole life been all the way in wherever I am. So if I'm playing footy, football, and I'm on the field, I'm going to bring all of myself to that experience. And it's just the same all these years later. I'm going to bring all of myself to my poetry. I'm going to bring all of myself to my writing. If I'm going to sit in circle with my brothers, I'm going to bring all of myself there. And I think it's that love that makes that happen. It's that love that pulls us into the moment and has us fully engaged. And I think we live in a moment where a lot of our brothers out there are really tentative. They've kind of got 1 foot in life and 1 foot out of life. There's I mean, it's hidden forth. What was that? Sorry?
Is it back and forth?
Yeah, back and forth. And I think it's really fair that there's a back and forth. I think that's it's justified, but there is something to be said for truly choosing what we deeply know to be true inside us, and trusting the path is going to take us to all the places that we never knew we had to go to, and we just have to lean in. So that's been my experience in the next stage of it all, through these words from Mac.
Yeah, that relates before from people about your purpose is what you love doing. And with the podcast, what I found is that this will be the 28th interview that I've done. And so it's this idea that when you find something that you love doing, it flows as well. So literally, I started in August, and literally the podcast just flowed. And I've even got to a point where I had 6 weeks in New Zealand, and what I did was I made sure I got enough episodes for it to stream while I was away. So it's just one of those things that just flows. People come in, the episodes flow, the editing flows, and it's about, I feel as though when it comes to the idea of doing what you love, there's a sense that when you are able to literally just drop in and let it flow, it becomes easy, timeless.
Yeah.
Becomes timeless.
Yeah. I believe that. I really believe that. And that's my experience as well. It's like when we're doing what we are supposed to be doing, it just makes sense. We feel it. It's not always comfortable and it's not always easy, but it does flow. It does ask things of us, but it does absolutely feel, we just know it in our bodies, don't we? I'm supposed to be doing this. This is it for sure.
This just feels right. How does sacred leadership differ from normal leadership?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of different ways we could talk about it. But I just want to kind of meet the timeframes that we have here and just what this is. You can think about it as the being changed by that love over time. So, we've been speaking about spiraling and changing as time goes on. Sacred leadership means that we are like we said, but you left that statement you said at the beginning, there is an ecosystem on earth and we are taking our role within it. So sacred leadership is when we're living that role beyond industry, beyond modern constructs of beyond like modern constructs of society. We can still be, doing all of that as well, but it's the role that we're playing that is beyond the conditioning of our time. And what I mean by that is, for instance, you could say that I'm a coach still. I coach and I mentor, and I still do one-on-one sessions with people. That's a part of my life. But then if you look at this walk, which is an act of community rallying and cultural renewal, and there's no kind of gain in it for me. Not that sacred leadership doesn't have an exchange. It's coming from a deeper place than looking after myself. It's coming from a place of who am I and what's my role on earth in these times? And do I have the courage and willingness to actually play that role? So it's almost like the role that we play outside of industry, even if it expresses itself in industry. So take a carpenter as an example. Someone who builds things, they make things, they make things that are functional. Some carpenters like to make things that are beautiful, and they have their job, like their carpentry job where they make houses or cabinets or however it plays out. That same carpenter, not just doing their job, but actually thinking, where am I going to bring my carpentry skills, my creation skills on earth right now that adds the most of my abilities and craft and love to this world? And so they can still have the job, but there's also this turning towards the contribution of a greater dreaming. We're all a part of a greater dreaming, and the sacred leadership is when we engage into that greater dreaming, not just the surface level. The surface level is, I'm a carpenter, I do my job, I make things for people. Perhaps the deeper level is, I have a craft that can literally tangibly build the physical world that comes next. How am I going to be part of building the world that comes next? And how can I use my skills to do that? And some carpenters find their ways to, for instance, building roundhouses and creating spaces where some of the cultural renewal and men's circles and sweat lodges and these sort of things where they can take place. Their carpentry begins to create the opportunities for, someone like me or someone like you to come in and hold that circle and be in that space. And so they're playing their role, we're playing our role, however it looks. But it's where it's coming from. What depth of the river is it coming from? That is what wins the sacred leadership piece.
So it's almost going from the idea that leadership is about the external people. So it's about me, to thinking about the bigger picture. There's more along the lines of, where as a human race are we heading?
Totally. It's almost like if we think of our human family, like humanity as our human family, which we actually are, you can kind of trace us all back to some big kind of shared beginnings in some way, right? So we are a human family in some sense, the same way that all elephants are related. We are all connected in that same relational way. And it's relating to the human family as a grown one, not a taker from the ecosystem, but a contributor to the ecosystem. The contributing to the ecosystem is the leadership part of sacred leadership. The how we contribute, that's the sacred. So it's okay, so we're contributing to the ecosystem. We're playing our unique role. The quality of our unique role, that's the sacred. Can we contribute to the ecosystem in the way that is not just the most quantitative, but is the most qualitative, according to the being that I am? For me, for instance, my most quality contribution to the ecosystem isn't carpentry. That's not mine. I'm like a human relations kind of person. I'm a bit more of a, I've got to know, and that's innate to me. That's like innate to part of how I was raised, a part of what lives in my DNA, a part of how my dad is a cuddly being. It's like, it's a part of the story of me that I have to attune to over a lifetime and then live that in a way that contributes to the ecosystem.
So it's more about how can we co-create, but each of us have a different piece of the puzzle. And it's about almost bringing this piece of the puzzle together to make the bigger whole.
Yes. Yeah. And in that world, we don't have gurus anymore, because whoever the teacher is, or whoever's playing the role of teacher, is equal to the carpenter, because the carpenter is playing their highest expression of their role. The teacher's playing their highest expression of their role. The cook is playing their highest expression of their role. And because we're all playing our highest expressions of our roles, we're all like, and that's the circle. That's the circle of like true equality. And we're all grown. We're all in grown states of humanity contributing to the ecosystem. So that's the dream anyway.
So so if anybody listening here now, how can people start to really move from leadership into sacred leadership?
Yeah. So I think the first piece is to acknowledge that they're already living their destiny. Like, that's a bit of a humbling thing for some people, particularly if you're broke, or if you're in a relationship breakdown, or you're just in a moment in life where it's just a bit of the same thing, or we're just focused on doing particular things that excite us and caught up in our own kind of excitement. I think the first thing to acknowledge is that we're all living our destiny, and just to rest into that, like to breathe that for a moment. This is my destiny. I am already an expression of myself. I am already living who I am. Now my role, my task, my quest is, can I spiral into a deeper quality in the seasons and the years and the decades ahead, so that the quality of me is even more of what I am in the world? So an acknowledgement of the destiny, and then a beginning to explore and just consider, like contemplate. It's pretty simple stuff. It's like contemplating what the deeper expression might be. The carpentry is a good example. Okay, I'm making cabinets and I'm helping people out and I'm being looked after and I've got a solid income because of that. Like, what might be a deeper expression of this? And that the answer to that question is going to be driven by love. It's not like something that we're like, okay, we have to logically, architecturally work out. It's not like, okay, I can make cabinets, I should make cabinets over here. It's like, I can make cabinets. I am a craftsman of cabinets. Where is my love for building things and using my hands, drawing me? Where am I called? Like listening to the call, the same kind of call that inspired me to start the wisdom school, has inspired me to do this walk. Like, we have to listen to the call that's going to call us a little bit deeper. And we'll get dozens of them over a lifetime. These calls, sometimes they're big, sometimes they're small, but if we don't make ourselves available to hear them, available to be penetrated by the call, or I say penetrated, but I mean like contacted, for it to kind of wake up inside us, then we're not able to hear it. If we just stay busy all the time, that we find our way to the silence and the openness, then nothing can get in. We're just constantly, swiping, scrolling, doing, calling, watching, and yeah. So I suppose, coming full circle, it's about creating space for the call to reach you, and just by being open to what that is, we can be touched and called to somewhere that we're not yet. So honoring that we're already on destiny, and then opening ourselves to the call. This is kind of hero's journey stuff. we gotta be like willing to hear the thing. And I think it just takes a willingness to listen, to create space to listen.
It's hard to listen because we're in this fast-paced world, aren't we? And we're especially, I think, men are very good at doing, and it's hard sometimes actually just to slow down. And what I'm finding at this moment in time is just this last day is almost take action, what you can, and then surrender it, let it go. And then take in action, surrender it. Take action, surrender. And it's this nice balance of masculine action, surrender, feminine. And it's this nice spiral. And it just seems to, in the past, I've been like, go, 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 go. And then when something that's not working or I get a little bit overwhelmed, I go and find something to distract myself.
Yeah. I am an old Tibetan Buddhist sanctuary. It's really a farmhouse, but it still has its like Tibetan Buddhist roots here. And we have an altar downstairs, and sometimes we place an altar's, for those who don't know, it's like just a sacred table where you just kind of put things, put little statues or you put flowers, and it's just a little holy intention holding table. And I could just put things on that altar over and over again. I'm putting something on the altar. I'm putting things on the altar, but it's only when I've stopped after putting it on the altar and really take it in and be with it and drop into a moment of real presence. That is when we kind of enter a space of prayer or a space of openness, a space of holiness, a space of real presence. And that's what the altar's there for. It's not there to have stuff. It's there for the moments where it gets to touch us, where we get to be touched by the energy of the altar, by the presence, by the meaning that lives on the altar. So, we can do all these things, but if we never create space to be touched by what we're doing and really feel how we're spending our time, then we're almost in this like artificial AI mind planning kind of like creation, do this, do that. And we're almost distracted by our own lives. We can't find our way to the deeper beauty that wants to be lived and the deeper call that wants to come through and the soul that wants to find its way to the skin. Not just like in the deep bone, not just in kind of hidden in the core of us. It wants to find its way to the surface.
Nice. So obviously finding space and always being overcome by distraction. What other challenges would people kind of come up against when stepping into sacred leadership?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I feel like there's this ebb and flow of being whole and being broken, or being, we kind of know ourselves, know thyself, and then we lose ourselves. And some people kind of find their way to knowing things. They find their way to being the knower. Okay, I've made it. This is my role. This is my sacred leadership role. And they go, okay, this is where it is. And the challenge is that that's not where you end up. That's where we are right now. And at some point there will be a humbling or an unmaking or a continuing that we have to allow ourselves to go on. And so we have a lot of, for instance, I'll speak into, like, I experience a lot of the gurus of this age, a lot of the people who sit on thrones and speak knowledge. I experience them to be beautiful and deeply magical, but also disconnected from the relational field of humanity. Like, they're not down on the level with us in a relation. And it's a lot easier to kind of like say holy awakening things when you're not in the the to's and the fro's and of the biological tribal relation that is kind of here with the human family. So you could say that the growth for gurus is to get off the throne, to get down with the people, and for them to move from being gurus to elders, to being the one that knows, to being the one that's a part of it all, and is both being changed by the others, by the other human beings, and also gently calling the human family to the place that they feel is true. So it's guru isn't relational. It's kind of it's a Piscean age, one at the top, everyone else listening. Elder is relational. It's almost the same idea in some ways, but one of them is in the community, in the human family, in the village, and they're not just the one that they're also being changed. And if the gurus were changed, they'd become relational. They'd kind of get down into it with us, and they would be penetrated by the rest of us as well. So, yeah.
Yes, it's almost like one's on a pedestal, but then sometimes being on a pedestal, that can become your blind spot.
Yes.
You almost become, sometimes you can almost have too much, I think you've got too much power. Yeah. And people should do what you say. Whereas I think when you are there within the people, the one who is able to give knowledge, but also accept knowledge.
Yes.
You almost become that person who I feel as though it's wisdom doesn't come from you, it comes through you.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. It also allows, all of us together as the collective of us is way more we are a sensory being, like a sensory collective being, all of us. And so the real art is for us to be able to learn from each other and to be able to be a sensory organism together, not just one direction to hear, but for all directions to come online and for us to begin to feel our way through life. But to answer your question just one more time and a bit more succinctly, and it's kind of connected to everything we're just speaking about, that one of the challenges is that people think that they've come to the end, or they don't remember that the spiral continues, and the spiral continues. The spiral of change will always continue. You become the fish at the bottom of the river, and then you got to become a crab. The form evolves over time. And so the best thing that people can do is just to go forward, knowing that it's just always the spiral is going to continue. There is always going to be risings and fallings. The sun will rise, then the sun will fall. The moon will rise, then the moon will fall. The tides will rise, then the tides will fall. We're going to continue to rise and fall, find our way to expressions of ourselves, integrate that, ground into that, and then continue on. And having the courage to continue is probably one of the greatest magics and arts of our humanity, particularly for those in leadership. The courage to, there was a time where I was in my 6-figure month coach phase, and I had to have the courage to continue to let go of the business that wasn't the truth of me anymore, that I could make the money, but it wasn't the deeper expression of me. I had to let that go to step into the next chapter, and which for me has been more of a spiritual path. Some people go the other way as well. There's no wrong or right direction. It's just mine was in integrity with myself, the courage to be in integrity with myself, and my integrity changes. Our integrity changes as we move along the spiral, because we become attuned to new things. We awaken to different things, and we have to hold that same quality of integrity. It just means different things at different points. Sometimes integrity means stepping forward and really standing for ourselves in the world and building the business. Sometimes the business that's different to the thing, or the message, the service. Other times it's literally letting go of the thing we just built to like drop into the next layer of it all. So coming from the coaching world and the Tony Robbins world, I don't think there's not very much talk about what comes next. There's not very much talk about, okay, after the decade of having made it, you are asked to also in some way let it go and become the next thing that you are. And I think that's sacred, to let go of the thing that is like defined as making it in like the terms of success in this age. That asks for such an integrity. It asked me, I got to the point where I said the words, I think I've made it. And it asked for so much integrity and willingness. And I'm still like, it's just that, it comes back to that same old idea of, at the end of the day, the only person that we have to impress or have to be right with is ourselves. And yeah, that's what integrity is being right with ourselves. And so it's just my conversation with myself, and it's every other man's conversation with themselves. Are you right with yourself? And are you like, do you feel like you're in integrity with yourself, with how you're choosing to move in life and live in life? And if you are, great, continue, and know that integrity is going to change as you grow, because it's as you grow, it's going to ask, integrity will ask different things. So you have to hold that same courage. I used to love watching weight loss shows, like Biggest Loser kind of stuff. I don't know if you had it over here in Britain. We had it in Australia.
Yeah.
I just had a thing for that because I love the visual transformation. And the trainers would always say, the contestants would say, is it going to get easier? And the trainers would say, it's going to get harder, but you're going to get stronger. And it's the same with integrity. Like, like, am I going to get to the place of like the end of it all? And the answer is no, but you're going to be so strong in your integrity and so in tune with yourself that you are going to feel like you're moving through the world as who you really are. And that is a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Nice. And could you talk about your trip, your walk? And you mentioned before we obviously went live that you're starting to feel a little bit of fear. Can you explain a little bit more?
Yeah. So the walk is from this southern tip of the Isle of Wight, up the centre of England, through Scotland to Durness in Scotland's far north. It's not the longest walk in the UK. There's another one. Actually, the longest walk is around the entire perimeter, like the Great Coast. It's like 2,000 something miles or something, 3,000. I don't know. It's wild. And there's another one that goes from, is it John O'Groats to something Landing? I don't know. Anyway, it's like down in Cornwall to the other tip. It's almost S-shaped. But I'm doing the spine of Albion, which has a special significance because it represents the spine of these lands, the actual, like the vertebrae of these lands, the kundalini of these lands. And as I walk along, the act of it all, and people coming to walk with me, and all the kind of the magic and the drumming that we'll do, and just having a good time and having chats and little circles we'll do along the way. That is like a massage up the spine of the body. Some people like to massage like a human body. I like to massage like a whole block of land and people. That's my kind of like craft and thing. But you said the fear. It is a rite of passage. There's no, like, it is a rite of passage. My grandfather passed 6 weeks ago. I'm now the oldest man in that family line. And I feel it. I feel the presence of it. I don't want to put too much meaning on it because we're not really supposed to put, I'm not supposed to put too much meaning on this thing because the meaning is going to reveal itself to me. But it does feel like a rite of passage, moving into young. If it was the olden days or the ancient days, it'd be like I'm coming into the beginnings of Wise One, like age-wise and life stage-wise. The beginnings of Wise One, it almost goes like adult, Wise One, elder, and each of them are like 20-year blocks, roughly, almost like a generation each in some ways that we live through life. And so I'm coming into Wise One, and it is because it's a rite of passage. I just know what comes with that. I've had some chronic illness. I've had a meniscus tear for the last 18 months. One leg is less developed now than the other from the amount that I haven't been bearing weight on it. I've got a frozen shoulder, which is like 70% healed. And I just know that there will be points along this way where, even though it doesn't make sense, I will feel like I'm genuinely going to die. And it will probably be an ego death. It'll probably be part of what it takes to grow gills or to learn to breathe water, to live the deeper, what it is to live the deeper currents of the river. But it's going to, in the moment, feel like I'm dying or that I'm terrified. And yeah, that's just ahead for me. And to kind of make it be a bit more tangible for some people, there'll be moments where I'll get hit by a car. There'll be, like walking on roads, or like gently hit by a car. There'll be a moment where hooligans are like doing donuts around my tents. These things have happened before. I've been hit by a car doing a long walk before. Had hooligans go around my tent. I've had to try and find somewhere to sleep in the place where I shouldn't sleep, and I've had to put my tent down behind an Aldi. It's like there's like the homelessness, and then people shaking the tent in the middle of the night, sort of thing. And then on top of that, the blisters and the soreness, and then just having to continue. So it's a lot for me right now, not being like the young man that I once was. Maybe when I was 23, this would have felt a little different. It would have felt a bit more like a athletic thing. But at the moment, with my body state and kind of coming into my 40s now, it just feels a bit more like, whew, like this is going to be hard. It's going to be really hard, and I am going to suffer, and I choose it, and that scares me.
It's almost like bring it on kind of thing. But what I would love to do is, when you are back after your walk, we can do another episode and we can explore a little bit about what happened and what you learned along the way.
I'd love that.
So just to finish off, can you tell people a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, so we have School of Living Myth. Essentially, that's a place where I mentor emerging leaders. And I say emerging, but that's not really an age-based thing. It's just a readiness-based thing. So I mentor people through the journey of stepping forward into themselves in a deeper way. Yeah, it's just a really beautiful community of emerging leaders. And it's called School of Living Myth. So it's like leadership through the lens of living myth. And living myth is just it's the myth in the moment, the myth attuning to kind of like the myth of who we are and practicing to live that in the world. So if someone's an emerging leader, they can come and spend some time with me. I also do workshops and immersions around the UK at the moment. People can find me at the website schooloflivingmyth.com. That's the best way to find me, or just to follow my YouTube, which is Matthew Liam Gardner. Watch a couple of videos, get a bit more of a feel for who I am. And if they ever find their way into circle with me or into an immersion, they're really powerful experiences that they're a combination of almost the modern day facilitator workshop with almost a bit of ancient magic and subtle ritual, very subtle ritual. It kind of combines all of that. So yeah. And Manchester's the place where I do most of my workshops. So I'm up there about 5 or 6 times a year.
Cool. That sounds good. Thank you very much, Matthew. And I look forward to doing the next episode where we actually find out what happened.
Thanks, James.